Greetings and welcome to PinballHelp. Mike here. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got a good friend of mine who is planning to go to an auction where there's a pinball machine, and I thought that I would do a little video about what to look for neophytes in evaluating a pinball machine at an auction or a yard sale or on Craigslist or anything like that. If you decide that you want to look at a pinball machine and you want to try to figure out, is it worth getting? Should I get it? What's wrong with it? How do I tell what's a good machine and what's not a good machine? I'm going to give you, I guess, a little short monologue and a demo of some important things that I think are worth looking at. So the first thing I want to start off with is, let's say you don't know a whole lot about pinball machines. How do you know what's a valuable pinball machine and what isn't a valuable pinball machine? That's really hard, but it always starts with the name. Always make a note of the name of the machine. Twilight Zone, Jumping Jack, Card Whiz, Genie. Obvious. It seems so obvious, but I can't tell you how many times my friends have called me and said, "Hey, Mike, I found a pinball machine at this place down here. It's for sale." I'm like, "What's the name of it?" "Oh, I don't remember." That's the key. Get the name of the pinball machine, because then you can look it up on the internet. You can type pinball followed by the name, put it into Google. It'll bring you right to the internet pinball database, and you can find information on the machine right there. So that's one quick way of looking up a machine. Sometimes you can find out how many were produced, and find out, you read reviews on it and stuff like that. That still doesn't tell you whether that particular pinball machine is worth getting, whether it's going to be a total nightmare or it's going to be super easy and a great deal. So there is no hard and fast rule, but I'm going to go over a few basic guidelines. The first thing we want to do is make note that pinball machines are divided into different eras. Okay, so I'm going to walk around here and show you some of the different eras of machines. Point down the ceiling. The oldest eras of machines are these old tabletop, like bagatelle machines. This is from they have them from the 1800s and earlier too, but this is a good representative of the early machines, which were mostly just luck oriented. You just pull the ball back and it would fall in here. This is the very first Bali. This is 1932 here. These machines are more or less valuable as antiques and show pieces. They're not particularly interesting or fun to play. The values of these machines can go anywhere from 30, 40 bucks on up to a couple hundred generally. This ballyhoo may go for anywhere between $200 and $500 depending upon condition. And generally speaking, condition is really king. In games like this, these early ones aren't even really electrical. They're just all manual. So this is more of an antique-y item. It's not something really you'd get to play. The play value on these things is somewhat limited, but for somebody like me who has a collection, I want to be able to represent all the different kinds of games. So these early games, you see like Whiz Ball and stuff like that. And then there's a lot of beautiful artwork in some of the earlier games. This comes from a 1940 Genco pinball machine called Big Town. So the early pinball machines were wood rails. Let's talk about these. Here's a good example of a wood rail machine. This is United's Carolina. Really beautiful game. Not super great play-wise. These are also fall into the antique categories. They're not going to give you the play value of more modern machines. The values on these games are all over the place. They're very old, from the 40s and the 50s and 30s, and depending upon the title, usually most of these are all kind of, the prices vary, and it all has to do with condition. Unless you have a particular interest in these early era games, there's not really a good reason to go after them. They're very cool. They've got some neat features, the wood legs and the artwork and all that. But they're not mainstream. They're not really mainstream pinball. There's a few exceptions. There's a couple of these early games that are prototypical, like Humpty Dumpty, that had the very first set of flippers on it. And some of those are worth having just because they're historically significant, but generally speaking, these are hard games to find, to restore, and to you know, they're not necessarily good pinball values. And then the later wood rails that start to resemble more what we see with flippers. They started with the smaller flippers. This is a 1959 Gottlieb around the world, and you can see it's got some damage there. The back glass is all flaking. And I'll talk about different things to look for in a game. And one of the things you definitely want to look for in any pinball machine is the condition of the back glass. You see how there's literally pieces missing up here. And then this whole middle section, somebody spray painted it with blue paint from the inside to basically compensate for this huge stuff missing. In a big back glass like that, where there's flaking around intricate parts of the artwork, that's significant damage. It's going to significantly affect the value of the game. And unless it's a particularly valuable game, that kind of damage is a deal breaker. It's just not, it doesn't make it worth it. You can sometimes find reproduction back glasses, but the older and more obscure the machine is, the much less likely that's going to be possible. Sometimes, you know, I've known people that have taken these games and done a laser jet printer and printed new artwork and just put it in there. You can do that. Again, it's not going to be ever a collector quality game or necessarily a good investment or anything like that. These are the early wood rails with the small flippers. This is 1959. Again, the market is kind of unstable on these things. Sometimes they go for, generally they're all in the couple $100 range, and it all depends on condition. This is a good example of a game that's in pretty bad condition. While the art on the play field is in pretty good shape, you can see these plastic inserts have all shrunk, and they're just all messed up. And to make matters worse, the plastic inserts are screen printed, so they can't be easily replaced with just generic plastic inserts. This is a game that would require a lot of work to fully restore. And look at the plastics, they've actually melted. These early games used vegetable-based petroleum plastic type stuff in here that did not hold up as well over time and started to deteriorate. And so what you're seeing is the plastic's literally melting and coming apart. And these early games, again, unless it's a particularly sought after or popular model, it's going to be very difficult to find plastics to replace them. So this is not a game that would be an easy one to restore, and hence it's not worth a whole lot of money. So you got to be wary of these early games. Of course, when somebody has something, they generally think the older it is, the more valuable it is, and that is not the case. It's not necessarily, especially with pinball machines. Now, these are all electromechanical that I've talked about so far. None of them have circuit boards or things like that. So let's move to the next one, which is the standard electromechanicals that you see. Mostly Gottlieb's, Williams, and Bally games. And I'm going to show you, here's the inside of these things. So let's say you come across an old electromechanical machine and you want to try to figure out, is it worth it? Well, obviously, first step, look at the title and do a little bit of research on that. Or call your friend like me, call Mike and go, hey, Mike, this game is called blah, blah, blah. What you think? I'll be happy to say. So let's say you're looking at a machine, it's at an auction. How do you know whether this thing is a complete pile of crap or not? It's really, really hard to do sometimes, but it's common sense. First thing, you got to be able to get into the machine. All these pinball machines, from electromechanical to the modern era, they usually have a lock in the front. Hopefully they've got the key, you can open it up. There's two places in the machine that you get into. There's down here in the coin door, and in the back of the head, there's a lock behind there. Usually, if that's keyed back there, the key to the head will be often hanging on a little hook on the inside of the door. Sometimes the owners don't even know this. But being able to get into the machine is key. If you're trying to buy a machine and they say they don't have the lock and that you can't get into it, again, that's a major strike there. Because if you can't see what's going on in the machine, you can't take for granted that anything in there is complete. So assuming you can get in and you can see the inside of the machine, then you just start looking at it. When you see stuff like this is all signs that drinks and liquids have been spilled on the machine and have trickled down, and it'll cause corrosion. It's not uncommon, but again, the more of it, the more abuse the machine is taken. See all the rust here, stuff like that. This game, now let's take a look on the inside of the game. you have your basic components. These are the chimes that make the noise. You have your score motor here. You have all these other relays, and then underneath the playfield, you have all these other relays underneath here. So if you're looking at a game, how can you tell that it's complete? Because that's really what you want to make sure. Is everything here? Because these older games, if something is missing, it may be very hard, if not impossible, to fix. So what you generally do is you just look around. You look around and you see if you see something missing. I mean, this looks like there's maybe should be something there, but if you see there's a strip here with notes that say this relay is that, this relay is that, and this one's blank, so we know there's not anything missing there because there would probably be a note there saying that there's supposed to be a relay. Also, generally, if something was taken out, you might usually see a discoloration underneath, you know, where it sat. So if you see any signs that there was something there that was removed, you see right here, look where the discoloration in the wood is, where this thing has been unscrewed. You want to look for signs that anything's been tampered with. In the case of this game, look at this. You've got a wire that somebody has manually run from up underneath the drop targets over to here. What this tells me is somebody's been tinkering with the machine. That could be good, it could be bad. You never really know. Whenever you see new wires like that, you got to wonder, okay, something was up with this machine. We like to see everything as original as possible. And of course, being able to turn the machine on and make it run is always the ultimate thing. But even if it's running, if you're in a situation where you're trying to buy it or at an auction, you're not going to be able to fully tell if every feature of the game is working. More often than not, though, when you're going after these deals, the game is not even working. They may not even have access to power. It's in some storage unit, you know. So you got to be quick on your toes, take a look at it, see if you see anything unusual. So on the inside of these things, a couple things to check. Obviously, you want to check to see if you see any obvious problems. What do I mean by obvious problems? Things missing, pieces of things laying around. You know, look through the debris on the bottom of the game. See if you see rat crap anywhere. You see signs of water damage. You see nuts and bolts and things that look like they fell off of other parts of the game. Anything like that is worth looking in here. Also look for any signs of burning. These coils will heat up and they can burn, catch fire, do all kinds of things. See, these are the coils right here. You want to just kind of see whether or not they work well, and they don't look like they're burned up. See, there's no real signs of anything, and I'll show you a burned up coil in a minute so you can tell the difference. It's pretty obvious. Another thing you can do if you can get in the game is take a look at the little score motor, and the score motor rotates counterclockwise, and you see these three little nubs. You can kind of grab it and just push it a little, just gently, like that, you see? It should spin kind of smoothly like that. If it doesn't, that's not necessarily a good sign. It doesn't mean the game won't work, but a good machine score motor should go kind of smooth like that. Never force anything like that, because those are all gears down there, but you just kind of give it a little nudge, see if it'll move. That's good. It means it's not seized up. That's the main heart of the game as far as controlling the timing of everything else. Now, how did I get the playfield up in the first place? Once you open the coin door, there's usually a little latch down here. See, in this case, it's right here. You pull that latch down, and there's a lockdown bar. And here's a lockdown bar. Lockdown bar is right here on the top, and then this lifts up. Once that lifts up, then you can take the playfield glass and slide it out very carefully, and then you can just grab the playfield right here and lift it up. Sometimes on older games, the shooter rod may need to be pulled back a little bit before you lift up. And then there's a little arm here where you can rest the playfield up. Since I'm shooting this with one hand, I can't really demo it without putting the camera down. But that's how you can lift up the playfield and look at it. So again, you just take a good look at the machine, see if you notice anything that looks particularly bad. I mean, this is a good example of a game that's really, it's kind of dirty, but it is complete. There's definitely been some repairs on it, but it looks like this game could be made working. There's nothing major missing. Okay, let's go look at some other games. Let me show you what a burned up coil looks like. So you get into your game here. You get into your game with the case of EMs, and then you get your little key from the back here. We want to go look in the other side of the game. So we go around, and conveniently put my tripod here. Okay, so take our key, we unlock this and pull this out. And then this is the inside of the head of the game. Okay, again, this is another area you want to just kind of look at things and see if you notice anything wrong. In this case, what we've got is we've got the score motor reels, we've got a credit counter here, and then this game has chimes in the head as opposed to the other game that had chimes inside of the main box. But if you look right here, this is an example of a burned up coil. And you'll see what I'm talking about. See how it's all, you know, it's literally kind of melted. And see this coil sleeve down here. Let's see if you can pull back a little bit. This coil sleeve is literally melted. This thing is seized up. In this case, it's actually been disconnected. You want to look for any wires that are disconnected. So this thing melted. That's a sign that there's something wrong, something broke on the machine. And then over here, similar situation, except in this case, the coil literally took a piece off of the chime bell and it's gone. So this is going to have to be replaced. So there's an example of burned up coils that you want to kind of keep your eyes open for. So, and that can be in any kind of machine, whether we're talking about electromechanicals or solid states. Now, let's talk about the other kinds of machines. In addition to